Hello and welcome back to our Let's Play video blogcast thing. I'm AWAC.
I'm Gamadev.
And we are continuing through Monster Manor. We're going to do level 4. I don't know that we'll have time for level 5, because I don't want these to go over an hour. But we'll see how this works. I'll get to this eventually. I'm actually writing a plugin for... I'm going to skip past this. We've seen that plenty enough. I'm actually writing a plugin for the GIMP to load cell files. And once I have that up, then I'll be able to do insets of original artwork and stuff. So I have the first pieces of the parser working. Now I have to decode the pixels.
Uh-huh.
So and it turns out that's complicated because there were so many different pixel formats.
Perfect. Someplace I have a GIMP plugin for all the M2 stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
Fantastic.
We can put in some.
put that one up. Put that one up on the web. So let's see. What do we got here? Yeah.
Hey, try loading that blank slot there? Because I think you saved to your blank slot. Did you actually save?
Well,
let's see if you...
I think I did, but I saved to both of those slots.
Yes, but I'm just kind of curious.
All right, let's see what happens.
Someone didn't check for a zero string when.
Well, I mean, I think part of the. Yeah. Okay, so this isn't the. Wait, I think it is. Hang on. Yeah, there we are. Okay. Yes, so we will be.
So when you patch it later, this game later, you check for if the user has actually entered an actual save name slot. And look at your first spider.
Here's the first spider. So the trick to these is to get them in a narrow hallway.
So, yeah, this is one of those.
Come on, jump. There.
So they can only attack when they jump, right?
That's correct. But their jump is quick enough. I mean, years ago, I was quick enough that I could get them when they were at distance, but not anymore. So I have to wait for them to walk up to me. They don't really. Oh God! Here we go. Come on. Come on down here. There we go. How much has it got me for? Okay. So you can kind of see how this is going to go. Oh, hi.
Now, see, it's unusual that you made an enemy. That kind of highlights the fact that you can't look up or down. Or aim up and down, because normally you don't need to.
Okay, so Wolfenstein, you couldn't look up and down.
Right, oh no.
Doom, you couldn't look up and down. Marathon, you could, but not very well.
Yes, but you auto-aimed up and down in all those games.
Really?
Yeah, so if you had a guy on a high ledge, in Doom, even because again, the game there is no real height in that game. It's all as far as the internal map is concerned, everything is existing at one height. It doesn't bother to check height, except for rendering. It does a little illusion.
Okay.
But so if you fire at something that's up on a ledge shooting down at you, it just goes to that height because there's only one height on the map.
I see. Okay.
So
this wall texture here, it's a little unremarkable. Somebody posted a link on Facebook to 3DO's first CES, Summer CES, and in there's about 5 seconds of footage from the prototype version of Monster Manor, and it had this wall texture.
This was the only wallpaper
that was the only. We had time for one wallpaper, one monster. Oh, hello.
Oh, you could have hit that.
Stop laughing. Jeez. Yeah, so you get an idea. Okay, so they start attached to the ceiling. So let's get rid of the ghost. This is the only exception to the, the Ravenous Bloodbladder Beast of Trawl rule. Spiders activate on proximity, no matter how far away. Yeah, see. So we see here it is. Okay, let's get down here. So you have to come down here. Come on. Jump. Nope. And the last time I tried playing this, I ran out of ammo. So. Okay, so now this guy. Are you still on the ceiling? Oh, shit. Where are you? Damn it. Come down here.
What?
Come on. So yeah, so this is going to be, creepy, slow. Come on. There you go. All right.
So it's possible it's not that your reaction time is different.
I think I've slowed down over the years.
No. I'm thinking because all right. So this is what happens when you play an old system on a modern TV. It's got to upscale it, so you might be losing like a frame or two of if you don't have this. A, you have to have it on game mode, and B, you have to have a game mode on your TV that actually supports the concept of I don't want to spend any time upscaling this. I want to do it within a single video frame.
Do I have this set to game mode?
I hope so. And some of them they won't bother to do it with something like composite or something. I mean, but because you have to set only like a specific input works, or you have to name the input PC. There's a whole bunch of little tricks. But this is something where it's like, depending on the platform, people say it's like, wow, it's like my reactions have really slowed down on an HD set. It's like, no, it's your HD set that's trying to do more processing.
I've wondered about that. With modern sets, it says, I'm doing lots of processing, but I'm delaying the audio too, so it's okay. No, it's not okay.
No, it's not, because unfortunately your input is not is delayed. So, well, it is. Well, because you're reacting to the video and you're seeing that. Because so a lot of people, it's like they'll curse like lag. They'll blame their controller. They'll blame you're using a hardwired controller, wireless controller or something, and it's like no. And that's why it's like depending on and sometimes the consoles themselves will introduce lag by if they have to upscale to another resolution. So
a console that introduces lag on its own, that one presumably they have facilities for compensating for that.
Or say a console that can't upscale. So ideally, if you want to set your console to match your TV, so that the TV is not doing or your receiver, because then you got two levels of indirection. You got the receiver doing something to it, and it's like, it's okay. I've matched the audio delay output in the receiver. It's like no. So it's like, for an old console, you want to plug directly to the TV. Because a lot of people like to go through these video upscalers because it makes it look nice. It's like, yes, right. But it also takes time to do that. And unless it's really expensive, which most people don't.
When their TV's really expensive?
Well, the upscaler is really expensive to not introduce lag. But usually it's like they go for image quality, which usually takes more time because they do like when you record this, if you record like ATI, this thing called Video Soap, and it's like, it's really great because it gets a few frames and then it says, this is jitter, this is interlace, it deinterlaces them and all that great stuff. But of course that takes more frames to do all that stuff.
Right.
So now you're getting.
That's why I thought it was too loud. Okay.
Well, I like.
I know. I don't want it to come over the room, Mike. So all right. So the what you ideally want to do with the spiders is get them at range because they drop off the ceiling. Pause. And then you can nail them. But as I said earlier, I have to review the code to make sure, but I believe the spiders activate on proximity no matter how many walls are between you and the spider. So it's just like a straight, distance calculation.
So are all the wallpapers a single size?
Yes, I believe they're all...
So you don't do any level of detail stuff, like for far away you use a smaller one, just... temporal aliasing.
No, we didn't do any LOD stuff, which in retrospect probably was a mistake because I could have eked out some more frames per second if I'd done that.
It's already smoother than most first-person shooters on the 3DO.
No, the first time I became concretely aware of people doing LOD stuff on 3DO was when it was what the hell was it? Road Rash.
Road Rash, yeah.
Which they did to pretty good effect. But yeah, this is... as you may remember, this is a source-based renderer, as they called it. Oops.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Basically, so it just, regardless of how many pixels actually end up on the screen, it always traverses all the source pixels. Oh, hello. Okay.
Go for the distance shot. Come on.
Well, yeah, he has to jump. Is the thing. Oh, who's that?
Probably Stabby McGhost here.
Are you coming around? Or,
No.
It's back behind the player.
Is that scream supposed to be your scream?
No, that's not me. That's
No. I mean,
Oh,
like,
the player screen, yes.
Yeah. Player's got a bit of a girly voice.
Come on. Gotcha.
I banish you with a lens flare.
Again with the lens flare. Yeah, that was like a brand new thing in.
Oh yeah, I know.
Isn't all the SIGGRAPH papers that just come out on that about 1993?
Probably. Like, how did it? Yeah, I remember there's a big deal that they'd put artificial lens flares in what was the movie at the time? Hook.
Oh.
Like for Tinkerbell and stuff, they'd put all these like.
Okay.
They'd had and then I think the guy who wrote the plug-in, then like turned around and sold it. I think his name was John Knoll, who later he did like all the. He was like the effects supervisor on all the Star Wars prequels and stuff.
Oh.
But I think he then monetized the plug-in and made a crap ton of money before somebody decided to, just build it into everything on the planet.
Every renderer.
But yes, it's like, hey, look, we can get a Spielberg look without having to, make it look like it was shot live action by putting something you normally try to avoid getting into a camera.
Yeah, it was because like for decades everyone said avoid lens flare, and then someone's like, oh no, it's stylish.
And then Steven Spielberg loved to use it in all his films, and then
right.
And then of course now it's got a resurgence with Mr. J.J. Abrams.
Yes.
Like Star Trek. If you saw the latest Star Trek,
yeah.
where it's just like, how do you see anything on the bridge? All these damn flares in your eyes.
Oh. It's eating me. Oh, Jesus.
He toned it down, I think, after I think he realized like Star Trek was probably the best, or the end of that road as far as his aesthetic. Although he did it in Super 8 as well, but then again,
right.
He was also making quote a period Spielberg movie, so
right.
It should look like Close Encounters with all the lens flares and stuff.
Oh crap! Oh crap! Geez, which way should I go?
I don't know, towards health maybe. I don't know.
Okay, so it's
Not checking your corners, man.
come here.
You're walking backwards into a room. I mean, okay, for every book, well, that's good for some enemies in your game since you know it. Well, explain your style of play.
I already messed up on this once, so I kind of know where I'm going to get gazumped. But
so you know how to play. You played this all the way beginning to end, obviously. But have you played it beginning to end, or have you just played individual levels?
I have played every level,
well,
but I have not played it beginning to end. So it's kind of.
Well, so that was what I was going to ask you. It was like, because you said you were burned out after making this. That happens to everybody after a game. They're usually burned out by it, and they don't want to see it again or touch it again for some amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So how long after that, though, could you actually go back and play it objectively?
Wow.
And actually, like, either enjoy it or go, what was I thinking? Or
and play it objective. Well, at least in this particular in the instant case, 20 years. I don't know.
Because that goes back to like making a sequel. Because like the best time to make a sequel to a game is literally right after you finish the game, because everybody's
it's kind of fresh with ideas.
You got the pipeline down, you got the tools down.
Hello there. Ah.
Oh, did they have a hook shot? Did that thing seek you?
No.
They shoot straight, huh?
Yes.
Okay, it does look kind of like. Because it's like, which unfortunately, most dev teams do not want to make a sequel immediately afterwards. They want to go to Hawaii for a few weeks and decompress and all that stuff.
No, I agree.
But it's like that's the absolute best time to do it, and it's kind of interesting nowadays. We have the concept of DLC.
Oh,
like
Lord.
But I know people bemoan it, saying it's like, oh, that should have been on the disc in the first place. Well, as a game developer, I can tell you, no, it was not going to be on the disc in the first place. Or if it is on the disc in the first place, it wasn't finished, not ready to go. But they might know, like, we're going to use these assets eventually, but we just don't have any time to code for it. So that's sometimes why it ends up on the disc. But most times it's like, no, it's not really ready to go, because by the time before a game hits the store shelves, it pretty much has been done for 2 months.
Mm-hmm. No, I believe that.
Because you got to go through, manufacturing, you got to submit it to the console makers and all that great stuff.
Go through their content approval process or whatever.
And before it goes to them, you have to set it through your own content approval process. Like,
how did that happen?
What? Oh. Well, wait.
Stefan,
is,
you're
on
not
the
paying
other, is the other side of the wall actually a fully lit room?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, every cube. So here we're kind of looking at a cube. Every cube has two possible artwork faces: the north-south faces and the east-west faces.
Mm-hmm.
So the other side of this wall may be red wallpaper.
And I assume they're all pre-lit or whatever.
They're all pre-lit. Yeah. There's not really.
You're just tinting the cells, though. You're not actually. That's not a different piece of artwork, right? There's just because the 3DO you could do that. They had that wonderful.
Right. The pimpulator, I believe, is what Dave Neal called it.
Yeah.
Pixel process manipulation pipeline.
Right. To darken or lighten the cells.
Right. You could do a.
You can actually color. It's right. You can also do. You can actually blend to like. You could actually do color lightening, couldn't you? On the.
You could.
Which I know a lot of games. Not a few games had used it, and Disruptor was actually one I saw that used it really well.
Mm-hmm.
Had these wonderful colored fogs and like ground fog and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there were some games like Starfighter when they went to port it to other platforms. They couldn't do that same kind of blend to a color, and so it ended up looking like the PlayStation. I think can only darken; it can't lighten.
Okay.
There's some weird thing like that. It was, it ended up looking like really, really bad when they ported it.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of flexibility in. Okay, is there anybody behind this door? Yes. There was a lot of flexibility in the cell engine on that sort of thing. It was a little weird the way they did the math. Oh, hello. Come on. Here you go.
Yeah.
And so, but the way it worked, it was something like you had 3 bits of resolution on the multiplier, and basically what you got was you could like multiply by anywhere between 0.125, 1/8 up to like 3, and then you got to shift back by 3, so divide by 8. Come on. Is there anybody around here that I forgot? So by using those 2 parameters, the numerator and the denominator, you could adjust the brightness of pixels. You could also do multiplication. You could also do transparency in much the same way. Ah, shit. All right, where are you? Come here. He's hitting the wall. He just doesn't realize it. There we go.
Yeah, that made it very flexible because, like, transparency. I remember, like, the Saturn, you had to have like screen door transparency for most things,
right?
Because which basically is just like
alternate,
don't draw
alternate pixels were on and off, and
which a lot of arcade games had to do up until they got blending hardware like 3DO
like this guy, yeah.
And then
yes. So now back over here.
Need more ammo.
Yes, there was some back. There was some back here.
But it's like so. Yeah, so like immediately after this, you like didn't want to make a follow up, but they eventually. So Studio was formed by this time.
Yes, Studio was formed while this game was under development, and I'm just gonna waste the extra 5. This is after so Trip comes up and says, "We're just going to do the console. We're never going to do software. Never going to do software. Never going to do software. Oh, by the way, here's Studio 3DO.
Yeah.
We're doing software, which is not too much of a surprise because he founded EA, and so he that's what he does. But it was kind of cheesy of him to do that after the fact, after he promised a bunch of developers. Oh. Okay, so. They
so is the spider ever a boss?
Spider is never a boss.
Yeah, that would make sense. Because
they're just too hard.
Yeah,
they're hard enough as they are.
See, if I were going to do a sequel, I would say, this is kind of a cheap character in the sense of hitting you. It's like, if I could just tilt my gun, I could hit him.
I think I can't remember if the original one didn't jump. I think like early in development, I don't know who it was who said, "Oh, they're too easy." I'd like to punch him, but
yeah, well, like it's one of those things about like, yes, you can have a character that's really tough to kill, but here it's like it's almost just highlighting a fact of like you can't look up or down. And I would, if I was going to do this in like a modern game, what you usually would have is like the character has a shield of some kind and his weak spot is only exposed at a certain point in time. So it's not basically it's the same mechanic, the same, enemy attack, the same outcome, but it's like it gives that illusion to them that there's not some limitation in your control scheme or something. Talisman.
Yes.
Exit. Basically all you need to know.
I looked down that hallway. All right. So what's behind this door?
But yeah, so I mean, Killing Time was in production for a long time.
Yes, it was. I think they had that going for a year and a half.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like, well, let's make a bigger and better, first-person shooter.
There was two aspects to it. He jumps to the side sometimes. Two aspects to Killing Time, as I understand it. I wasn't on that team, but Kim was, and so I've heard a few stories. Part of the technology they leveraged to make that work was some of the maze stuff in Jurassic Park Interactive.
Right.
Which was more general case than this.
Yeah, I remember that. A lot of people love that section. Probably the only section they loved of Jurassic Park Interactive.
Apart from the mini arcade games.
And you but of course you didn't have any weapons in that game. It was just basically run from room to room and avoid the raptors.
And avoid the raptor which was chasing you. Yeah.
But and it did. It had you could look up and down, or not that there was any reason to. I mean, but I mean.
Damn it!
See behind you.
That would be a spider. Hi there. Oh, he jumped across. Hi there. That Jurassic Park Interactive was funny because it was under development the same time this was, and so every so often a weekly disc would show up, like a gold master. Well, not really a master, but hello. It would show up, and we'd look at it. Now, Jurassic Park Interactive was supposed to be the flagship product, right? And so, but I'm looking at these, and it was supposed to ship the same time ours was, which was, before Christmas '93. And I looked at some of these dailies coming. I'm calling them dailies, but they didn't come out that often. Is there anything over here? Nope. And they were like really poor. I'm going, what's going on here? They've got a bigger budget than we do. They've got more people than we do, and it's looking pretty awful.
Oh, I don't know. Movie license, maybe.
Well, okay. So I think that was something else that was going on there, which was they got the license to the movie, but they didn't get the license to any of the actors who were in it.
Right.
So they had to very judiciously.
Which was that was pretty much common at the time. That video games were still considered kind of ghetto. So it was. I remember when it was like a big deal that they got the likeness to use James Bond, or one of Pierce Brosnan in one of the later James Bond games after GoldenEye. They didn't have didn't have the rights to use the likenesses until after GoldenEye. It was probably because GoldenEye was a huge hit. That somebody said, "Hey, there's a page." Well, also because the budgets also went up on games after GoldenEye. GoldenEye was still a tiny team, but then Monster hit, and then suddenly people started throwing money at it. And then you have enough money to actually pay the actor just to use their likeness. Forget about reading lines. That was even later. It was just like, here, we'll get a sound alike, and then but we can use their face. So
hooray!
So yeah, I remember Jurassic Park Interactive. Les Hedger is actually two of the characters that you see in the. Not voice. I don't know if he did voice work on that. But he's actually the body double for the little bits of live action they shot for Nedry and Hammond.
That makes sense.
Which is...
Les was a big guy.
Yeah. And... yeah, it's kind of funny. But Les is weird because I knew him as a programmer before I knew he did voice work.
Oh.
Because he worked at that one company with us.
Okay.
post 3DO.
That's right.
And he was doing programming, and then it's like one day he's not around, and it's like, oh, where was Les today? It's like, oh, he had a voiceover session, or he had a commercials something, which is really weird, because like I remember he was like shooting a James. Weird connection again. He was shooting a James Bond commercial.
Huh.
The idea was it's like, you're James Bond, and so they had like all these people dressed up in tuxedos as James Bond, and he was one of them. And like he came up with the joke. It's like they're all like in a huddle, and he goes, "What do you guys do?" The director goes, "What are you guys doing?" He goes, "We're bonding. Don't you?"
Oh, oh God.
So yeah, and then later again he did voice work for another game I'd worked on, where I had literally probably listened to his lines of dialogue thousands of times, because I was doing the lip sync pipeline, beginning to end. So I had to process the audio files and do the animation and crunch it into the game and test it and link it up to the game logic and all that stuff. So I'd heard his voice, thousands of times, and it wasn't until I was looking at what Les had done in voice work, I was like, hey, I worked on that game. He was that character? I never knew it, because he did hundreds of lines of dialogue, and I had to listen to him over and over again, as you do during game development. That's speaking of like getting sick of something.
Oh, I've heard stories of people at Skywalker Sound. A friend of mine was like working in the office opposite a guy who was trying to edit a particular sound effect in, and the effect was a crying baby. So it's so like okay, but it wasn't just that. It was
Thank God for digital nowadays.
Yeah.
No, I've had that problem too, where I've sat next to somebody who's had to do screams for an M-rated game, and it was like, okay, and literally like sometimes it was literally one day, whole day was a single scream that I would hear over and over and over again, and I tell people, if you want to get a nice soundproof office, work on the audio pipeline in an M-rated game. Your neighbors will insist you have a soundproof office, because they don't want to hear the constant swearing and explosions and gunshots and stabbings and all that stuff. So,
here comes the stab.
Yeah. The audio people are like the most unpopular people on a team if they don't have their
own soundproof office.
Yes, because it's like because a lot of times nowadays you can't work with headphones because you have to be able to hear it in surround. You have to have a stereo system, and you have to have its volume up. Whereas, like, which you can imagine is not the most pleasant thing to work next to. Yeah.
I wouldn't think so. No.
Yeah. So, yeah. So this.
Anybody else in here?
Yeah. So Jurassic Park Interactive is like, you could see where it's like, let's make a bunch of mini games and string them together and show off the thing. Since we can't get the actors, we can only get a little bit of footage from the movie that doesn't have any of the actors in it, because we can't afford to pay the actors.
Right, not recognizable in any way. Yeah.
So we have to have body doubles. So that means basically they're just running away from the camera all the time, or off in the distance. Oh, and there's another person I work with as a engineer.
Right.
Was one of the kids in Jurassic Park Interactive.
Oh. Running away from the camera.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and I asked him, I was like, well, how the heck did you get this? Like, basically it was just like one night they quickly needed somebody. It was a night shoot, I guess. It's like, because he was like 10 at the time. No child labor laws, I guess. Since he wasn't a member of like any union or anything, it was just like, here, get a video camera, go shoot some stuff. It's like, okay. Let's pretend the California woods are Hawaii.
Yeah, it's like, they have eucalypti, and am I gonna?
But you're out of ammo.
I'm out.
Dude. It's like the early days of, it's like what YouTube is kind of turned into. Anybody can make a movie. Back in those days, not everybody could make a movie, but video game companies at least had equipment, not much of a budget. So it's like they had the makings of like early independent video, which is like, well, we can afford the cameras, we can afford everything but talent. So we'll supply the talent, and
I'll just run around and Well, I mean,
Let's shoot some live action stuff.
Oh, hello.
I remember, well, that was another thing that took Killing Time a long time to make, was they did their monsters as live action.
Yes, they actually were pretty inventive about it too.
Yeah.
They like set up, what was it? Was there something in there? There's probably something in there. They set up these treadmills that the actors would like walk along, so it wasn't. They're actually like moving in motion, so they could actually get proper motion capture. I remember seeing the original test footage for the clown that goes tickle tickle.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty. I mean, they took the, I think this was like the first person shooter to have transparent ghosts, and they took it one further in having transparent FMV ghosts, full motion video ghosts, where it's like you had the, you'd walk up there and you see the little vignette of like, guys, we're gonna stash it around, the plot point ghosts that would.
Right. Yeah.
There's no place to put all the ammo. We'll just put in crates around the
everywhere.
mansion.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
At least they justify it versus
Right.
sort of like, replace like,
what do
wow.
I pay you for?
Yeah.
Figure it out. Don't bother me. I have a party.
It's like, why would you leave all these valuable weapons and ammo just around for people to come up so they can use them to kill you with them? That's a really poorly thought out evil hideout.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but it was very ambitious, that game. I mean, it was innovative in a bunch of ways. Like it's an open world game. There's no load screens in that game. It's just, you can just stream from one section of the game to another. As long as the door's open, you can go anywhere, anytime, and no loads, no apparent loads. I remember when they ported it to the PC. You just basically hit a trigger plane, the camera would freeze.
Right.
It would vaguely put the camera sort of in the same place.
Right.
You just freeze the game, put it in the same place, but most of the time not. So you have this weird jump. It's like, oh, I just hit a load spot. I mean, kind of like what Half-Life does, where it's just like they just pause the game while they load it up.
You're in an airlock now. So,
yeah. But it was like, yeah, in Killing Time, it was all just smooth backgrounds. Streaming, you wouldn't know, that it was doing all that stuff in the background until you pop the disc out. Must go faster.
Who's attacking me? Is there a spider behind my ass? No.
Did you back into some health, or did he drop health?
No, he doesn't drop it. Nobody drops health. Nobody drops anything. But there might have been a health behind me. But if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, I think this is the musical track I do use for Halloween. Is this level?
So what do we got? 20 apiece.
Don't be greedy. Just go through the damn portal. Just go to, of course, would you really want to go through that portal? I'm looking at that thing. This looks like the portal to hell. This is like, this looks like a comforting place I want to go.
Tired? Don't rest now, or your quest could end in monstrous failure. Press on. Only a chilling death can stop you now.
Okay, thanks, Les. So, let me...
What are we at?
Okay, so it's 34 minutes.
Come on, you can do it.
You think so?
If you don't lollygag with, you're allowed to run past enemies. It's like I realize they will still come after you, but still. Your game has been saved. Thy quest is over.
All right.
Go for it. Come on.
Let's see.
Chant.
Is this the one?
Hey, whack. Hey, whack. New textures.
New textures, yes. This, I think, was one of the first ones that actually one of the first maps that was made after the prototype. And if we actually go to the map here, get an idea. I think Stefan did this.
This is what we call a turkey shoot because. And those are those flickering animated wall textures.
In fact, this is just another example of what the artists did with the stuff that they asked for. So you've got the burning pyre up there. Interesting. So, unfortunately, you can't have treasure or basically that pyre hanging there represents one item on the map, and so you can't have like treasure there at the same time. So there's like a couple of halls that show up where you hear ding, 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 ding as you're picking up treasure, and then a skip as you walk under the
Well, it's
the pyre.
makes sense.
Oh,
Hey,
oh, too far away. Oops.
He's shooting you.
Hang on. Yeah. Oh, now I shot again. So I don't want to shoot his shots. I want to for example, right here, you see the pyre and listen to the pattern.
So you can also see it. I mean,
Yes.
but, yeah, I mean that's legit. I mean,
Yeah, no.
Pitfall
I'm
does
not-
the same trick.
I'm not
To
complaining.
save
I'm
space.
just pointing it out. You know, it's like the sorts of things that you.
Yeah. Well, so you
do
made.
it.
So this is like one of the first levels you made.
This is one of the earlier ones because I remember these textures showing up very early on.
Yeah.
And I wish I could remember who did these. I think Stefan might have done these as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, this became one of my favorites because they did such a lovely job with this.
Now, of course, yeah. It's like the old lull them into a false sense. Like here, 2 treasures, and then hello monster in the next
Yeah,
one. You get used to doing that.
So anybody over here? Nope.
Okay. The Mighty Morphin Powerhead. Okay. But yeah, so I mean,
Yeah, thank you, math error.
so it's, yeah, so it's
But this also shows how the perspective foreshortening isn't really there.
yeah. Well, that's yeah, it's interesting when you make a game, it's usually best to like make your first level last, just because
You mean the first level in the game?
the first physical level of the game, yeah, last, because by that point you've sort of gotten everything down in terms of your pipeline, your work process, and everything.
And your sense of where the difficulties lie and how to
Yeah.
tune that first level.
So it's like goes back to the you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Well, yeah, I mean, and I worked on games like that where we've accidentally made the first level last, and it's like, oh, that was such a godsend. Where it's like, because usually a lot, like for rookie products, a lot of people will tend to make the first level first. They're thinking, well, of course, this is my
right.
and you get very ambitious, and you end up like using stuff that you end up realizing not going to work. You end up throwing away later, and it just gets to be like a huge bloated mess. And then it's like, oh, I need to go back and redo it, or you're left with something where it's like, what was I thinking? I was still inexperienced. So it's like usually most people like nowadays figure out like if you make the middle of the game first, it usually represents a nice cross section of like what your game is going to be in terms of like all the problems, because everything's been introduced, right? So like all the enemies are present, all the game mechanics are present, and then it's like, oh, okay. And then you go back to the first one, it's like, well, what would be a nice gentle introduction to my game? But still show off a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
And I remember like one game worked on where it was like they realized they needed a tutorial level. And then so like our level designer was so good at our tools by that point, he literally knocked it out like in like 2 weeks tops.
Nice.
And everybody who played the game was like, it was their favorite level of the game because it's like
The tutorial.
Yeah, and which is kind of funny because like it looks nothing like the rest of the game. Because it's supposed to be like this virtual reality like training center or whatever, and it's like,
right.
and he just figured out it's like, oh, if I just take all the textures off all our regular objects and make them semi-transparent and just overlay a grid on top of them, they'll think it's like, oh, it looks like a sort of like a hologram or something, and then the world is really simple because it's just checkerboard blocks and building lines. People like, oh, it's like Tron and everything, and they're like oohing and eyeing, and it's like, yeah, it was like the quickest thing we could do. But you're so good at it at that point, it's like So it's like, yeah, and also like that's why it's also the best time to do like DLC, because it's like, well, now I know,
Now
I don't
you have
like
to bang
in
out
case
stuff
you didn't like
quickly.
the ending to our game. Here's a better ending.
Here's another example of a transparent wall.
Right.
So yeah, that's just like purely decorative. It's just really. But yeah, we didn't really have a lot of time to do this, and I just want to get to level 10 because I love to complain about that one. I think it's level 10.
So were any levels cut from the game,
Um,
or just like repurposed?
I don't know that any were cut exactly because we had so little time that we really couldn't afford to throw stuff away.
Huh. I mean, you had like monsters that you.
Oh no, we never had monsters that we threw because we had very little time. I would have liked to have had more because we only ended up with 4. Hello. And so we end up reusing them across 12 levels,
Right.
which kind of gets stale relatively quickly.
Well, even in modern games, it's like you'll see like a lot of enemies, but they're basically the same enemies with like slightly different models or different, even just different textures. But they have basically the same behavior, but just maybe different tuning settings,
Right.
I like tune too.
But it was not only would have required more art, but it would it would have required more art, but it would also have required more code.
Right.
Because each of them has slightly different behavior. I mean, the pathfinding code. First of all, there isn't any. It's just basically make a beeline. Oh, there's a wall. Oh, damn, I can't get through this wall, but I'm going to keep trying anyway.
Right.
Now here's an example of. It can see you because it's transparent, so it's active. It's trying to get to me, but it's not going to get through the grating.
Can you shoot through the grating?
No. Tried that earlier.
Dun dun dun. Version 2.0. Yeah.
Oh, pick that up. Let's see.
Yeah, it's like because like going back to Killing Time, it's like they that game feels very bloated. It's got some impressive sense, but it's like it's like how many different types of pistol do you really need?
Oh, okay,
It's sort of like they have a lot of weapons and it's nice, but a lot of them are just like, well, these aren't effective, so you end up using like maybe 2 or 3 weapons, unless you absolutely just run out of ammo, and that's what you're stuck with. Because it's like, well, why would I want to use this crappy ass pistol when I got the machine gun? So,
I find that's true with even modern games.
well, yeah, I mean, but sometimes it's like like say like a Halo or something. You'll definitely use different weapons for different enemies. They almost try and make like it's kind of like a rock paper scissors kind of thing, where it's like certain enemies will use certain weapons that you can take out much easier with certain types of weapons. Or if you're playing like multiplayer, for instance, certain things work better. It's like, well, this map, sniper rifles. This map, well, sniper rifle's going to get me killed because there's no
they're all
long distance. It's all close quarters, so
right. They're all charging at you at the same time.
Or it was like Killing Time was like it's like, yes, all their art looked awesome. I mean, they spent enough time on it. It should look awesome. They had really nice detailed textures, but then it's like, and the architecture was,
Shit.
Architecture was very nice. But it's like, at the end of the day, it was like, wow, the frame rate is really low. They could have.
It was unfortunate.
They were impressed with their own design a lot, and it's sort of like, and it sort of tended to get away in the game, in the way of gameplay a bit.
Are they? Oh, I see. They're kind of stuck.
Have you played Slayer? Slayer?
I don't know.
It was another. This is probably. I think this is like probably the next first-person shooter to show up for the 3DO. Theirs is cube-based as well, but they have full floor and ceiling and different heights to the rooms and everything. But you can tell it's very cube-based. And it's got the D&D license. So ultimately, when you're shooting stuff, so they got a crap ton of stuff you can pick up and stats and stuff. But ultimately, when you're hitting guys, it's all dice rolls. It's like they tell you like the rule set they're using. Before BioWare made it more mainstream to have D&D games. Slayer was out, and it was its unique feature was the dungeons are all randomly generated.
Oh.
So, but you could trade them because you fed them a seed. So it's using a pseudo random number generator with a seed generator.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I dimly remember that. Yeah.
And it's actually really good. Although the fact because it's random generated dungeons.
Yeah.
It's basically here's the dungeon. There's an end boss, like there's like 1 of 3 end bosses, like giant dragon, giant gold, that kind of stuff. But it's basically it's literally a dungeon crawl. It's like one. Here's your seed. Here's your dungeon.
Yeah.
Crawl through it, and it's very good. I mean, the textures look great. It doesn't run as high a frame rate as this because it's got floor and ceiling.
Too much to do.
Yeah. But it has nice variable height rooms, but you can tell, like I said, they're based on cubes, but they hide it very well.
Okay, where's the... Oh, there's the door. Extra guy.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so here's the ammo that I was worried about. All right,
But
guys.
and then they actually did a sequel, Death Keep, which was not based on cubes, obviously, and had these really, really elaborate dungeons, and actually had a full-blown story.
Ah, there we are.
But a lot of people didn't like it because, again, they had an interesting choice for their first level, which was, let's set, because it has a full narrative and everything, that the first level of the game is an ice cave. And so your slips, and they modeled, like Pio, they modeled your movement physics. So you're constantly
sliding and
your first
getting in the way
level.
of
Yeah,
things,
it's like that would have been great.
falling off of stuff.
Yes. Like,
Oh,
oh,
no.
let's go off a cliff. And yeah, that definitely was a full 3D game because they had these wonderful vertical dungeons where it's like you would work your way up, but you could still see like the layers below, like these rocky, like suspended in midair, kind of like rocky cliffs and stuff. And you could see like all the way down, and you could fall. And if you had the proper, ring of
whatever
light unleavenness or
feather fall.
There you go. Yes, probably. I'm guessing you played D&D in your day.
Yeah.
Of course.
Gotcha.
You could actually just fall straight through, and it's like, wow, they kept them all loaded, and you could go from layer to layer. What?
That looks great.
What the
Just the
level
layout?
design?
Yeah. That's. I'm pretty sure this is like one of Stefan's earlier maps.
Yeah. Looks like an Indian rug, kind of. But yeah, it's I think Slayer and Deathkeeper are like two of my favorite first-person shooters on the 3DO. That they're, the second one is very deep, and the first one is just like, oh, it's cool, it's random dungeons. You don't like this dungeon? Yeah, I don't like this dungeon. Roll me a new one.
Oh, I think I know where this goes.
They got a ton of enemies. They're not as detailed or well animated as these, but they're straight out of D&D, so. Even though I'm not a D&D player, I thought, oh,
so they could actually call things rust monsters. And
yes, it was an official license game. You had I think you even had I can't remember, did you have the gelatinous cube or not? His favorite.
Yeah, I remember when Rogue was out for Unix systems, and TSR got wind of it, and they said, no, you can't call it rust monsters, and so they had to change all the names of all the monsters.
The monster of tarnishing or something like that?
No, they called it an aquator.
Oh, jeez. Yes.
Okay, what have I missed?
Yeah, I mean, I think Slayer might have... I mean, yeah, Slayer was... And it was an early 94 game. Because I remember playing it a lot,
What am I missing?
I couldn't remember if they let you look up.
Okay.
They let you look up or down or not, or was they just? I mean, they definitely the
that's
camera
all
would
it-
move up and down. But I think it was like just at the start of the level. It's like, look, ceilings, and they would just pan down. We have ceilings, people.
Honestly, we have the technology. We won't be using it very much, but
Yes. And then then Deathkeep was, like I said, a lot more. Slayer was a 3DO exclusive. I don't remember if Deathkeep was as well.
So what was the one where you're like in this mech suit fighting these aliens and
Space Hulk.
Space Hulk. All right.
Yes, Space Hulk. That one is literally a turn-based game, but it looks like a first-person. That's another one of those things where people thought it was kind of like bait and switch on them. It's based on a very popular board game.
Oh.
Well, popular amongst nerds, but
come on.
well, have you heard of it?
I have not heard of it.
Okay, there you go. So there's a.
But there's plenty of
I know board
RPGs I haven't heard of.
tabletop games or whatever. Yes,
right.
Go to Nerdist and watch Will Wheaton's weekly video cast or whatever. But and Space Hulk is a fairly well known brand in that space, but it was not amongst the average video game crowd. And it has, if you saw the box shows these gorgeous visuals which are in the game. But they make it look like a first-person shooter. There's stuff like the Gene Stealers look just beautiful. These full-screen monsters.
Yeah.
And it shows you, wielding these wonderful weapons and fighting them. And again, that's all true. It's in the game, but it's turn-based. Because it's a strategy game. You control like 4 guys, and it's a squad. It's kind of like the Colonial Marines. You're going to go out and clear out this space station of aliens.
Right.
Or I think they're called the Gene Stealers.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, and then, and it's basically go here, fire, go here, fire down, guard this corridor or whatever, and you're trying to corral them into different spots.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you get right next to one of these gene stealers,
Right.
it does a really clever thing. They change from a sprite to basically a full motion video.
Right.
And it's
they're
very
kind of-
transparent.
They're kind of wrestling with you.
And it's kind of like, it's like a QuickTime, before there were QuickTime events. I mean, you sort of like, parry, dodge, counterattack and all that stuff. And that's what is this thing that's on the back of the box. And it is actual gameplay, but people's like, wow, look at the graphics. And it's like, look at these full 3D models and stuff. It's like, yeah, well, it's basically, it's a fantastic game. I played it, but it's a kind of a slow-paced game. And people who just want to run around and say, why can't I shoot? Why can't I shoot? It's like, it's turn-based. At its heart, it's a turn-based game. So it kind of loses the whole, because it looked like a Doom killer when they saw it, but it doesn't play anything like Doom. But yeah, Slayer. I just want to see if Deathkeep got ported to anything else. What we got here? Deathkeep. Let's check Moby Games,
All right.
the source of all things game.
Fair number of things, game. Did I leave any treasure back here? No.
And it helps if I spell it properly. Let's see. There's no B in Deathkeep.
Hi there. Oh dear.
Deathkeep. They did. Okay, so Deathkeep, they did port to Windows, which was popular amongst the later 3DO games. Like, well, we can do 3DO, or we can do. And maybe we can get this to run the PC. There was a whole bunch of like 3DO exclusives that either they, PC was like the best they could do just because they were doing stuff that was too sophisticated for the other consoles, just because they used the specialized hardware in the 3DO to maximum advantage. And Mercenary is another one like that. You remember that one? That never got ported to anything else, which is sad because that was, somebody said that's like one of the first examples of cyberspace, Grand Theft Auto style gameplay. You just say go anywhere at any time and you could take on the boss, right away if you want to. You die,
Right.
But it's like you had to build up your character and then you could go on any mission at any time. There was even just like I think a couple of weeks ago there was an article in Gamma Sutra about sort of like the lost pioneers of those guys, and it's like that was a case of they're out in the Midwest and EA threw a bunch of money at them and said, make a game for us. Do what you want. Very un-EA like, right?
Well, this is the EA we know today, yeah, very unlike that.
Yeah. But, well, yeah, that's one thing I did want to mention. So, the box for this, and maybe you can insert a screenshot of the box. Or
Yeah,
you can
I
scan
could
the
probably
box.
manage that.
Actually has a photo of the team, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's a development team. The inside cover of the box has most of the development team, not all of them. Some of them weren't available. Basically, they said, yeah, so we have because, in fact, that was one of the things that Trip, that was one of the principles, you might say, that EA was founded on, was we want, geez, how can I introduce this? So back in the day, you had the Atari 2600, and all these games. And you would never know by looking at the box who wrote the games. And there are people who spent, because writing for the 2600 is hard. It's just like this really horrible piece of poop. And there we go. And so Tripp says, I think these guys should get credit. And so one of the things that he came up with was the idea of packing games a little bit like record albums. So that not only is the producer there and the publisher there, but the artists who created it. And so some of the earliest EA games, like Bill Budge's Pinball Construction Set,
right?
Stuff like that. There's a photo of Bill Budge in there, a very young Bill Budge. There's so they were doing that for a very long time, but around the time that we showed up to do this game, they were starting to ramp down on that. And so I think, according to you, I think this was like the last one that had one of the last ones.
One of probably one of the last ones where they acknowledged the team, at least in that. I mean, games still have credits on them now. That's like,
right. Well, I mean, now it's a giant crawl that rivals most Hollywood
sometimes
productions.
Even early in my career, they were still doing it like in the manual. Back when games actually had manuals.
Yes, that weren't PDF files on the disc.
Yeah. But now they're doing it to be ecologically friendly. No, you're doing it to save money, but
Yeah.
We're ecologically friendly when you switch from coloring to black and white ink. No, you were just doing it to save money. But which I have no problem with as long as your credit ends up somewhere on the game. I mean, if you have to play the game, do it even better because most people throw away the manuals in the boxes anyway, which is why complete box games are worth so much on eBay. But at least if it's on the disc, it's your credits are with it. But yeah, I mean, putting an actual photo. That's the last time I can remember would be Monster Manor, which is weird because so EA published the game.
Yes.
But it was developed by
NTG
before or after acquired by 3DO.
Before it was acquired by 3DO. So so that's a nice little bit of way to segue into history. Oh god, it's a puzzle. So the 3DO console was actually developed by a small company called NTG, New Technologies Group, which was founded by R.J. Michael, Dave Needle, and Dave Morse. R.J. was a software guy, Dave Needle was the hardware guy, and Dave Morse was the business guy. If you've heard of these gentlemen before, you may be aware that they together created the Atari Lynx. And prior to that, all three of them worked at Amiga. So they decided, okay, we want to do. So they've come off the Amiga, they've come off the Lynx, and they say, okay, what are we going to do next? And they said, let's make a console. And the 3DO is what they created. So midway through development, enter Trip Hawkins, and he says, I'd like to sell this. I'd like to. There we go. I'd like to sell this. I'd like to make this into a platform because he had just come off of a bunch of pain and misery with Sega and Nintendo because of their business practices and how they treated their developers and how much they charged them to publish games. And so it's like, I want to create a platform that is powerful enough to carry us forward several years into the future, but also but also has reasonable licensing costs. Where'd you two come from? And so so that's basically where those two guys got together, more or less, and that's how the 3DO ended up getting made.
And the idea was more that it'd be more like a VCR or a DVD player.
That was part of
in the sense that
it was
everybody
manufactured by multiple hardware companies, Panasonic, Lucky Gold Star, so forth, so that they would all compete on their ability to drive down costs, so that the platform would get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as the years went on.
And that was actually a decent strategy, and it would have worked, except for you had a company like Sony thrown into the mix, who decided we'll do our own, but we have the manufacturing power to sell it at a horrible loss.
Yeah.
Versus like Nintendo never sold anything at a loss until very recently, because they had to.
Yikes.
And their technology was not cutting edge ever.
No.
They just use off the shelf parts or relatively cheap parts, but because they're Nintendo, that's very smart to do it that way. That worked for them for many a decade until, like I said, very recently when said, you want people to buy a 3DS, you're gonna have to bite the bullet and sell it at actual cost as opposed to making profit on your hardware. So whereas like Sony, when it entered the market, it was sort of like they immediately knew,
oh no,
you bastards. You had to be greedy.
You got
Son
greedy.
I think people will take our word for it that you actually completed this level.
I looked at the exit. No, I'm not going to take the exit. I'm going to
cheaply and conveniently ask. Let's bring up another point about this. I was wondering this while you're playing. What good is the score in this game? It gives you extra lives, but that's about it.
It gives you extra lives, right?
But it's not like there's
we definitely wanted a facility for extra lives. Although there are little beating hearts that show up.
You can't buy ammo between rounds. You can't buy hardware. You can't buy, there's no achievement unlocked. I've killed 30,000 ghosts or whatever the hell. Achievement unlocked. Ding. Now see, now if you'd only innovated that, you could have patented that and made a ton of money. But yeah, so yeah, we can also talk about other reasons why 3DO failed, but we can say that for the next one.
I think we could save that for the next one.
Which is sort of like, like I said, it's like the console, besides the high price, which is a myth, because yes, it launched at $700, but it was never more expensive than the PlayStation when both were on the market at the same time.
Right.
So this idea, everybody always says like, well, I couldn't afford $700. Like, yeah, but you went and bought a PlayStation. The 3DO was just as cheap, if not cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And also the fact that the console was almost too consumer friendly. But we can go in. I can have a little diatribe on that next time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
make notes.
But yes, no, I have my notes here. So, but this was a nice play session. Like I said, we'll just take
it as read that we finished the map with about the same score, and it's just like hand wave. And
somebody got greedy. I remember this map like the back of my hand.
God.
Hey, when did this word come from?
No, there was actually in the previous map, with all the pretty wallpaper, the haunted housey looking thing. Unfortunately, the way I was walking through the level, it didn't trigger, but there's a bug in that level where you're moving towards like the final room and spiders start crawling out of the wall. This is not supposed to happen.
Yeah, but it's a cool effect.
It's a cool effect. I mean, it worked out great because it's like really creepy. Oh my God, they're coming out of the walls. But it was never supposed to be possible for monsters to walk through walls.
Yeah. Well, you'll find that any business, whether it's making, new chemical compounds, new special effects, new games, most of your accidents sometimes usually end up in producing something unintentionally great,
Mm-hmm.
Some, oops, a misplaced code. It's like, hey, that's kind of cool. That almost looks like that guy is intentionally like he broke his leg or something, or he's, he's got a little twitch or something. That actually gives him some character.
Mm-hmm.
How did I do that? Okay, here's how I fix it, and here's how I make it happen intentionally. A lot of great stuff. I mean, that's most of early days of special effects is like, let's throw this in front of the lens and see what happens, Hey, when you mix these two chemicals together, you get a nice blue fireball. I wasn't trying to do that. I burned my eyebrows off, but hey, it looked cool. I'm going to film it the next time.
Some of the greatest scientific discoveries in history are heralded not by Eureka, but by, that's weird.
This is polyester, how that came about or something like that.
Yeah, some guy like threw some milky stuff down the... It's like, what happened?
All right.
Well, so we'll just hand wave over finishing this one and move on to the next level when we see you next time.
Have a pleasant evening.
Yep.